Hello everyone and welcome to me ranking all the audios from season 1 of the first Doctor Adventures from the fourth Doctor Adventures. So I've listened now to all of these audios from the first season and we're going to rank them. So, this is of course Tom Baker. He's just done the Lost Stories box set with Foe from the Future and the Valley of Death. Both are very good stories, by the way. You should check them out. Um, but in that box set, very clearly during a lot of it, Tom Baker's just reading lines. He's not really acting. That's especially noticeable in the first one, in Foe from the Future. It's very much Tom Baker's just reading the lines. He's not acting out the lines because he's still unsure about Big Finish at that point. But definitely in the second story, he's a lot more into it, and I think near the end of the first one, you can even say that he's definitely getting into it. And so here we are. It's nice to hear him actually act for this one because he's fully on board. And here we go. So the first one, Destination Nerva by Nicholas Briggs. This story takes place immediately after Talons of Weng-Chiang. Like the first couple lines that the Doctor and Leela say is the final lines from Talons of Weng-Chiang. They are said to still be in their Victorian getup during the story, even though they wear spacesuits at times. But yeah, of course, unlike the previous series I talked about, all these stories are two parts. Two part, 1 hour, an hour, maybe an hour and 5. Really simple stories to get through. So, this story is very much Ark in Space Mark II. We are back on Nerva Beacon. That's why the story is called Destination Nerva. Nick Briggs is going full nostalgia for you to open this story. Kicking off right after Talons. There's a mention of Jago and Lightfoot. We're back on Nerva. The villain is kind of Weirany, where it's like, people turn into people get sick, they get infected, and they become like this big blob, this body horror blob. So they go through that. This story is not anything too special, I would say, but it's still fun. Like, I remember the first time I listened to it, I did not like this story at all. I was not a fan of this story the first time I listened to it. But on re-listen, I very much was shocked. I'm like, I'm actually enjoying myself with this one. The part 1 cliffhanger came, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually pretty into this. And thankfully that continued with part 2. This has Raquel Cassidy in it, who you would know from Doctor Who in the what's it called? The Almost People. She was the head of that team. So she is in this one, playing Dr. Alan Foster. Tim Treloar's in this one as well, and Tim Treloar, he plays Big Finish's recasted third Doctor, and apparently this is the story that got them to be like, oh, he does a good job Pertwee. How? Nothing about his lines in this one scream that. Tim Treloar, the villain, Lord Jack, as he plays, is not even really in this story that much. He's really not. He's mainly in part 2, and even then he gets a couple lines. The main villain is the Infection. With that being said, definitely better than I thought initially. Initially, I would have put this in like the bottom tier. Now it has gone up to, I would say, a 7. Maybe, yeah, I'd say a 7. It's nothing special, but it's a fine enough story. Is where I would put this one. Then we have The Renaissance Man, one I had never listened to before. This is by Justin Richards. So this also, I should say, Destination Nerva kicks off the arc in the Fourth Doctor Adventures, which they do a lot of, which is the Fourth Doctor being Leela's teacher. He's going to teach her things. And we have The Renaissance Man by Justin Richards. So the Doctor takes Leela to the Morovanian Museum. Obviously, what better to teach someone than a museum? But of course, things don't go quite right. They end up meeting a colorful bunch of characters, and stuff goes on from there. This has a very cool idea of the museum, where the museum kind of takes the knowledge in it from the people who visit it. It kind of like sucks the knowledge from them, and that I think is a really cool idea. The idea of who these people that the Doctor and Leela meet are, I think, is also a really cool idea. How it's the same cast playing different people, right? And then it's revealed actually they're not playing different people. There's a reason why they are, you know, everyone's playing in multiple roles. There's a reason for it. Harcourt as a villain is, he comes off as a pretty good villain. You know, his quest is he values knowledge more than anything, so he has turned the museum into what it is, where it sucks the knowledge out of people's heads and goes into the museum and all these different exhibits and stuff. Which is how it's kind of set. There's like, you know, like an old-timey sheriff exhibit. There's a war area. And it's like they are different exhibits, different points. There's like a forest, it's like a jungle. It's like different exhibits that are kind of like being melded together as different areas, being separated by like doors and stuff. There is a twist right at the end of the villain, which is a very good one. You can also tell the Doctor's plan. The Doctor has a plan for how to defeat Harcourt, which you can tell very early on if you're paying enough attention, which I'm glad I picked up on it, because I heard the Doctor say something. I'm like, oh, I think he's doing this, and then he revealed that's what he was doing. I'm like, I got him. So that's very nice. Overall, The Renaissance Man, it's another fine story. I give it a 7 out of 10 again. It's just a fine enough story. Nothing too crazy, but it's what we need. It's just a nice, simple, fun story. And of course, Harcourt is actually played by Ian McNeice, who is Winston Churchill. So there you go. We have Wrath of the Iceni by John Dorney, who is a name that I'm becoming more and more liking to. I have listened to a couple of John Dorney stories before. I listened to The Crooked Man. I believe he did Requiem of the Rocket Men. And I you know, from being a fan of Big Finish and hearing and seeing many reviews, people going like, oh, it's John Dorney, so you know it's good. Yeah, I recently today listened to Heroes of Suntar, which is also by John Dorney. That's another really good one. So his name definitely breeds quality, and that stays true for this one too, Wrath of the Iceni, which is, I didn't realize till after, a pure historical. There is no aliens in this story whatsoever. Now, it is technically a pure historical. This is basically the Doctor and Leela meet Boudica, Queen Boudica. There's not quite a bunch about Boudica. I mean, we of course have some historical records and stuff, but not quite a bit to go off of. John Dorney, I believe, said he also had to read a couple of like children's stories and stuff as well to make this whole thing and try and get maybe a timeline of what's going on. But yeah, a pure historical. I love pure historicals. I love the idea of, you know, using the time traveling into a place, and the disaster is history itself. You have to just work with history. You know, like I mentioned before, like I love the first Doctor audio they have, The Great White Hurricane, which is just a 4-parter of the Doctor and crew having to survive in New York during the hurricane. That's it. That's all it is. But they get involved with stuff around the hurricane. They get involved in like a gang war. They meet the people. It's all character. The hurricane is the back setting, but it's mainly about character. The Wrath of the Iceni is about character, but the historical setting does play a big fact into it. There's quite a lot of action. We have Leela leave the Doctor, and she sides with Boudica, you know, because of what happened to Boudica's daughters, which the Doctor does a great job of, you know, bringing you up to speed, exposition. This is the history blurb part. And when it comes to the part about what happens to Boudica's daughters, Leela's like, oh, the Romans killed them? And the Doctor went, no. And they just leave a pause. And then Leela goes, oh no. Like, that was done perfectly. If you don't know what they're referring to, you sweet summer innocent child, go look it up. But yeah, I really liked this story. We have Ragnar, who kind of, because Leela sides with Boudica, she plays the companion of the week for the Doctor in this one, and she's nice and fun. The Doctor is... John Dorney really gets how to portray Tom Baker's Doctor. He really gets it. Him and Guy Adams, I think, are the ones who they really get the character of the fourth Doctor down very well, so that way they get like the Tom Baker isms, the little jokes and stuff that lighten up the mood a bit but don't quite take away from the story. They do very well at that, and that is true here. And they do a good job for Boudica, I would say, of she's been wronged very much, after her husband died and the Romans came to take over and what they did to her daughter. She has been wronged. But just because she's been wronged does not mean what she's doing to the Romans is right. Because, she's killing the Roman army. But then they say, like, she's killing the women. She's killing the old elders. She's killing the people who surrender. Like, she's going ham assassinating all of them. And Leela says, like, why'd you do that? They stopped. They weren't a threat. But, Boudica, she wants revenge. Revenge is her driving factor here. So again, I like that. They make it so that with Boudica, yes, she was wronged and what happened to her was horrible, but just doing something equally as horrible to other people doesn't mean it's the right thing. And this story, I would say, out of all the stories in this season, works the best as a two-parter. Like, John Dorney really got the writing for this one, where it's like Destination Nerva, I can see that extending to be more than 2 parts. I can see the Renaissance Man extending to be more in 2 parts. Lurathi Icena works perfectly as a 2-parter. He wrote it perfectly to fit a 2-part story. So I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's not perfect. So I would say 8.5. Put it up there. It is very good, and spoilers, might be the best of the season now that I think about it. We have Energy of the Daleks by Nicholas Briggs. Of course, Nick Briggs is going to write a Dalek story. So, here we are. The Doctor and Leela end up in the year, I believe they were aiming for 2015, but it's like 2035, so it's the near future. And there's this corporation, the Globesphere Corporation, and they're going to, push. They have like a new energy thing that they're trying to do. That will make everything goes. It's a new, and it's the thing you would see in the Third Doctor era. This new energy that's gonna make everything go well for Britain. And then there's the protesters who are like, no, what you're doing is wrong. It's that type of thing. I don't remember. Again, this is a story I didn't remember quite liking that much. I liked it better than Destination Nerva. I knew that, but I didn't quite remember thinking it was anything too special. But again, found myself listening to it and going, I'm very much enjoying this. It's also great to hear Tom Baker and the Daleks. This was also apparently supposed to be the opener to the season, but they pushed it back. Which, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure maybe they added the Talons of Wenchaya stuff when this became the opener. Maybe it was that opening part with Talons was probably going to be here. I don't know. But yeah, Energy of the Daleks is a fun story. They bring back the Robomen, which is that's a sweet idea. The Daleks, they're the Daleks. It's just nice to hear the Daleks. The conflict with Damian Stevens, who is the head of Globesphere Corporation, which is the company that's going to have this new energy. The conflict he has there is very nice. And Mark Benton, who you guys would know as Clive from Rose, plays Jack Coulson, who is he's the leader of the what are they called? The protesters. And I was like, man, the guy who plays Jack Coulson's really good. I really liked him. And then I looked up who it was. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. And the Doctor has some great lines when he's like, he goes to like a holographic, display, and it gives you the exposition on Globesphere and all what they're doing. And the Doctor goes, Damian Stevens, the Damian Stevens. And Leela goes, oh, you know him? And he goes, never heard about him before today. I love that type of stuff. That stuff is great. And the Sonic is used a lot in this story. which the Doctor doesn't really use the Sonic a lot in Classic Who, as we know, but he does a lot in this story. Maybe that's Nick Briggs trying to get the new series fans in, use a bit of that new series element, because this came out in 2012 when Matt Smith was at his peak. So trying to get some of that new series integration, I guess, because he does use the screwdriver quite a bunch in this story. Not a lot, not new series level, but he does use it quite more than many others. Overall, I would say Energy of the Daleks, it's another solid story. I think it's better than Destination Nerva and the Renaissance Man, not quite as better as Wrath of the Sinai. I say 7.5 out of 10. It's better than these two. But yeah. And then we come to a dilemma. We have Trail of the White Worm by Alan Barnes and the Usided Adventure by Alan Barnes. So this is the thing that the Fourth Doctor Adventures loves to do, which I'm not a particular fan of, which is these two is one story. This is one story. It's a 4-parter, but split across 2 releases. So part 1 and part 2 is here, then part 3 and part 4 is here, but you have to buy them separately. It is a very scummy business decision that I do not like, but they do it quite a bunch in the Fourth Doctor Adventures. I'm not a fan. But anyway, let's kick off with part 1 and part 2, Trail of the White Worm. As you guys can tell from the cover, the Master is back. He is here. It is nice. We have Colonel Spindleton. So pretty much, the Doctor and Leela arrive in Derbyshire, and there's this legend of the White Worm that comes, and it, the people of the village believe it. It's like just this legend, right? But it appears it's actually real. Oh no. The reveal of what the White Worm is, or I should say, who the White Worm is interesting. It's an interesting reveal. What the White Worm does is very interesting too. And the way this story is done, Trail of the White Worm, The Usided Adventure, it is one big story, but it is also segmented. Like Trail of the White Worm, the White Worm disappears after part 1 and part 2, does not come back. I will not tell you why. It's part of the story, but the White Worm is gone after part 1 and part 2. And a lot of the side characters in Trail of the White Worm do not return for the Usided Adventure. They are just gone. We completely forget about them. And then we introduce new characters for the Usided Adventure. The characters that stay and move is the Doctor, Leela, the Master, and Colonel Spindleton, who is like the Master's puppet. Pretty much. The Master is using his hypnosis on him. Because, in his own words, Spindleton is the most weak-willed individual he's ever met in his entire life. So he's very easy to put under his control. And the Master is trying to use the White Worm for something. Ooh, what could it be? Which, gets revealed in the Usided Adventure, where we meet and return to the Krulls. The Krulls from, the Android Invasion. They're back, and they are... Big Finish's take on them is just, they're stupid. Like, the Doctor, when he gets close to stopping the Master's plan, the Master's like, "You idiot! The Krulls are stupid! If I'm not controlling them, who knows what they could do?" And part 3 is very android heavy. They take the android and they go to town with them. It is android central for part 3. Bit of part 4 too, but mainly in part 3. They just go crazy. It's like everyone's a freaking android in part 3. There is a good thing in there when the Doctor accesses some deleted files from the Master, and then the playback of the Master in the files is very good. Of course, it's nice to hear Tom Baker and Jeffrey Beavers go opposite each other. That's really nice. This is Leela's first meeting with the Master. Colonel Spindleton is funny. I think he's funny. He's meant to be making fun of people who are like, ah, this country used to be so much better before people with their, men now with their long hairs, the people don't know their place and all their internet. He's meant to be like, the old man shaking his fist in the clouds type thing, which I roll my eyes at sometimes just because it's like, oh, you're trying to quote unquote own them chuds, right? Unit makes an appearance in this story. No Brigadier. They mention Brigadier is dealing with something in Canada. But Unit does appear in the story as well. And they foreshadow Unit in Trail of the White Worm when the Doctor tells Leela to go and get Unit. He gives her like a bunch of phrases to say like Unit, TARDIS, Doctor, Master, Zygons, Crinoids, Crawls, like whatever. Axons, like a bunch of stuff like that. So yeah, overall, I would say both of these stories are fine. I give it, as a whole, I would give the story a 7.5 out of 10. If we're doing individually, I think Trail of the White Worm, oh, is it better? I think they're both equally good. I would say, would I listen to them again? Probably. So I'll say 8 out of 10 for both of them, because it is one big story. That's how I count it, as one big story. So there we go. There we go. That is me ranking the 4th Doctor Adventure Season 1 stories. So we have the first story, Destination Nerva, is a 7 out of 10. The Renaissance Man by Justin Richards, the second story, is also a 7 out of 10. The third story, Wrath of the Iceni by John Doherty, is an 8.5 out of 10. The fourth story, Energy of the Daleks by Nicholas Briggs, 7.5 out of 10. And then the final story, 5 and 6, Trail of the White Worm and the Exciting Adventure by Alan Barnes, is an 8 out of 10. So, there we go. That is that. That is my ranking. If you guys have listened to these stories, what is your ranking? Let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't, I would actually recommend giving all of them a shot. That's going to do it, and I will see you all next time.